Good morning. Good to see all of you. So as some of you know, we just returned from New York City. We were there doing some practices, basically opening the I mind, which is a awareness practice that I began developing about 60 years ago, or more. Happy to answer questions around that if you have them. That this morning, rather than have a talk title, I just want to do what I quite often what is called mountains and rivers. So this means that you ask questions and I'll do my best to respond to them in a way that's helpful to you. So mountains and rivers number, I don't know, what is it, Paushan? 36, 32,
36.
36. So that sounds good. So mountains and rivers number 36. Okay, go ahead. Better hurry because I'm starting to come up with answers already. You haven't even asked me. Yes.
Sanji,
Yes.
why are forms important?
Well, the simple. I'm kind of making an assumption when you ask that I think you already know that you want to ask about it. So it's just it gives us a structure, just like you without a skeleton, you aren't going to have a human being. You might have an amoeba, you might have some other form of life, but so forms show up in different ways and show up as a function, just like the structure that we have here of meditating in a zendo in a monastery has a form and a structure that goes back thousands of years traditionally. Some changes here and there. The form of becoming a fully ordained monk is a strong form that you take up and endeavor to use to guide your life in so that you can live in a sane, uplifted way. There's no guarantee that you will live in a sane, uplifted way just by practicing meditation or Buddha Dharma. It might get worse. It can get outrageously worse.
Does a form have to always take the same?
Same what? Form?
Can a form remain unchanging?
Nothing lasts. So forms are always shifting and changing, though they may persist for centuries, but they eventually change. Nothing lasts, and everything that shows up is shows up, but it's unreal, as it says in the Sadhana Mahamudra, vividly unreal, but there's still form. It's vividly unreal in emptiness, yet there's still some kind of density or otherness to it. And that is the illusion part. Everywhere you look, if you see what you're looking at, rather than if you see what it actually is instead of what you think it is. If you hear what it actually is instead of what you think you hear, if you see, smell, taste, touch, feel what is actually there instead of what you think it is, your heart will immediately bust. It'll be broken. Because it can't withstand that kind of understanding and still remain separate from anything else. It can't do it. And if you continue to try to do that, because you're in a relative form, because you're in a human form, because you have a lifespan, you might be 35, 22 years old, you can maintain that for quite a while. You can even use meditation to maintain it. But that maintenance is just that. It will come apart, if only at your death. When your body starts to come apart and you die, coming apart, and everything you thought was so dependable and solid, like your opinions, your judgments, your ideas about what the world is and what it is not, come apart. Any idea about anything is an illusion. Any of them. Go ahead, come this way, and we can discuss that. If you see otherwise, I will listen to you. Further questions? Good.
When you're bowing, I think you said a few minutes ago that there's no guarantee that we'll live a sane and uplifted life if we meditate.
No,
It could get worse.
it could. Why would it get worse?
Because we see what we've been hiding out from.
That would be a way that I would say it. Because as you meditate, instead of there being somebody who's getting more and more peaceful, more and more mindful, more and more clear, or understanding is deeper. Not that some of that couldn't transpire, but mostly what is going to be happening is that as you sit down and hold still, all the movement in the mind stream that you have been able to avoid or look away from or project blame onto, or some way keep your distance from the so-called otherness. That is what, an illusion that comes apart, and you may have to go through a passage or a dark area of your practice where it feels like it's really getting difficult. And this may not happen the first 6 months or even 6 years. It may not happen for a long time. It took me over 30 years before I was introduced to those dense, dark areas of my own consciousness. And I was introduced to that by a simple teaching by Coleman. And I'm not going to go through that again. It doesn't take much, but you have to see it as a teaching rather than somebody who's abusing you, or as I felt like he was being disrespectful to me. No, he was teaching me. And since I could not believe that he understood more than I did, I'd been practicing for a long time. And did I have some understanding? Yes. Had a lot of it. I'd worked very hard over many, many years to see clearly. It just what I was seeing clearly. I just did not know what it was. I knew what I thought it was. And that is what he was endeavoring to point out to me. Yes.
Well, Divine, what is the difference between feeling like the teacher is disrespecting us versus feeling like a fellow Sangha member is disrespecting us?
From the point of view of you as a fully ordained monk, everything should be a teaching. But the only way that it can be a teaching, whether it's the teacher or whether it's the person next door, whether it's our neighbor Brad over here, who's probably has never even heard the word Buddhism or meditation. It's about you being a student. If you're a student, everything begins to teach you. And it's not particularly agreeable. It's not a pleasant classroom to be in. This is why the Buddha set it up so that all these young people, 14, 15-year-old people back 2,500 years ago, their parents brought them to be trained by the Buddha. So therefore he had a lot of monks, and people donated food and money so that they were able to have a monastic order, a Sangha.
Divine, so when we're, as a student, receiving as teachings, disrespecting from a Sangha member, how do we know when to engage with that versus engage with our mind, bowing.
So I think it's a very situational, and it will be choiceless. You won't really, if you're trying to make decisions about what to do, then that just becomes circular. Then it's a why, because, why, because, why, because. And it is more workable as far as being direct and thorough and genuine, to not try to pretend to be somebody other than who you are. You may have to spit nails at the person, but it won't be that you're punishing them. It won't be that you're a bad person or an abusive person, but it's dependently arisen. This is why we can't use, our culture is all about controlling people, getting people to live up to standards. I'm not saying we should avoid that. We need to look at that too. But the fundamental understanding, as I see it, needs to come from your consciousness, from your consciousness. And that means that which you are perceiving with any of the sense fields, including your money, without adding anything to it. Do not interpret anything. If you do, then what happens? Then we start to spin, or we start to feel like now we're right, or now we've got some kind of understanding. We start to grasp onto something as being, well, it's because of her, what she said or did. That's why I'm feeling this way. Yes.
On divine, what if that is happening with multiple Sangha members and we feel disrespected? Is that a time to look back
Just-
here?
That's the time to just receive. It's very situational. So if I'm not sure, I'm not tuning into which one of our melodramas you're talking about, but there are a lot of them going on. They are going on here. Otherwise, I wouldn't know about this. I couldn't teach if I was somehow separate from all the bullshit. I am the bullshit. Pardon me. So it's going to be different with each situation, the interactions between these two people, three people, four people. The important thing is to be as direct as possible, to be as sincere and to as honest. This doesn't mean you say a bunch of things that are not so much about things you have to say, but some kind of a bolstering of your own self-centeredness that, well, I just have to say this because it's honest or something. You have to lecture yourself about it, and you're probably masquerading as something.
On divine, what do you mean when you say I am the bullshit?
I'm just describing something that you are also. It's just that I know it. I know it. I'm not trying to be better. I'm not trying to improve. I'm not trying to get rid of my negative feelings. But you are. In one way or another, more than likely. You start to have negative feelings. You want to know why. And because of the nature of relative truth, there's all kinds of things around it. So yeah, he said and she said, and then this happened. Of course, that's why I feel this way. Well, you have no idea why you feel that way. And why? There isn't anyone. Those feelings are self-existing. And until you realize it, you will continue to blame yourself, blame me, blame your partner, blame your children, blame your parents, blame the politics, blame. Go ahead.
Kelsey Bowing, how can you discern if something is wise speech or right speech?
You can't.
Skillful?
You can't. It's not an evaluation thing. Right speech would be translated out of the fancy ancient term would be samyak, which doesn't mean correct as opposed to incorrect, but means thorough, complete. Right speech means just complete. Nothing is missing from it. It's speech that is completely clear. And it has no other motive of being this or being that. It has no agenda behind it. It's just direct. It's like it's raining out.
Kelsey Bowing, if I'm noticing that being direct without agenda or seemingly without agenda is triggering some aggression in another person, is that a situation where it's best to not be direct?
Again, so situational, it's very difficult to set up any kind of a standard or some kind of advice. how to handle something, or how to not say anything, or how to say it this way or say it that way. There's no strategizing the whole thing, because we are laboring under the illusion. This is an incredible illusion that everyone believes, buys into. I'm looking at it, you're looking at it, we're all looking at it, and that is the illusion that something happened back there and something's going to happen up there, just past and future. Powerful illusion. It's unreal. It's always this. It's never the past. It's never the future. It's always this. So no strategy. This is why I say over and over again, sit down, take everything out of gear, use that kind of a image, hold still, and just watch what rambles back and forth through the mind stream, and notice that which is observing the movement is not doing anything. The observer part of the consciousness becomes persistent. What we can really say it is just becomes stronger. It's prioritized the observing. In other words, the receiving is what's happening, rather than the producing ideas, judgments, opinions about what's happening. Shouldn't be happening. She shouldn't have said that.
Kelsey back. So if I'm noticing I say something, it triggers some aggression in the other person, and then I am trying to strategize to not trigger that.
So you're presuming that what you're going to say is what I'm going to agree with?
No, I'm wondering if that is me also then perpetuating delusion.
Don't do anything. Just less is better. When I say less, I'm not saying drop off the edge of the planet or something. I'm saying that less producing words or gestures like this, or less producing and more receiving. Sit still, receive this amazing, incredible world. When I say amazing, incredible, I'm not saying it's all that entertaining necessarily, but it's amazing in that there even is such a thing as an apparent otherness that is an illusion. You can't see something else. You see something else. This is an illusion. It means that it's there, but it has no credential for being there. It's dependently arisen. Take us further in there if you have more questions. I don't know what I'm going to say until you ask me a question. I don't have any planned strategy or answers around anything.
I don't have more yet. Thank you.
I like the ones you have. Please come this way. You can. Yes.
Thank you, Ally. When you talk about receiving everything as a teaching, sometimes I think about maybe the more traditional way of learning a lesson from every situation. Like, oh, in this situation, I learned how to not take things personally. Something like that. What do you mean? If not that, what do you mean when you say receive everything as a teaching?
The other way of saying it, along with saying it, just be a student, be on receive. If you're a student, go into even in the traditional classical sense, if you go into a classroom and there's a teacher and there's something being taught, then your job there is not to show the teacher how much you know, or even convince yourself that you already know what's being taught, you already understand that, you don't really need that teacher. And it's not about gathering information, like so what you seem to be suggesting there. Although there could be some of that, could be a little bit of that happening. But it's about just receiving. And if you really are really receiving what is happening, you won't know what it is, and it might be very painful. The first words out of the Buddha's mouth, as far as we know, was life is suffering. He was not a nihilist. He was not just full of negativity. He just had spent some time looking at his own mind stream and working with others, apparently, and made that statement: life is suffering, frustration, suffering, disappointment, not getting what we want. And that gets perpetuated by wanting something other than what we've got, or wanting to get rid of something we don't want. We're all in some kind of a dynamic like that is going on is going on that tends to perpetuate the disease, the discomfort, and out suffering, including fear. Needs to be seen. Yes.
Junchi Valley, does receiving point out something to us?
It may, but it's the idea is to, insofar as you can, whatever shows up, just receive it, just listen, just smell, taste, just think, no extra elaborations on the thinking to try to make it more palatable or more understandable. Just receive it. Receive the, as I was talking about in the opening the eye mind exercises, making a suggestion of moving the awareness, putting the focus in the center of the painting, and then going over, moving over to a white shape over here, or to a darker shape, or a circle or square, and just the failure of not being able to quite look at this spot and move the awareness. It's too far away. You can't quite get it into your consciousness. That's not failure. That's awareness. It's awareness. Everything's awareness. It's just a way of talking about what you're doing. So instead of the ego mind will come in and say, well, I can't do that. I can't quite. No, there is no failure. There's just awareness. You're slowly changing your dynamic over from success and failure modality of our culture. Cultures everywhere, even in Buddhism, that's happening, to just aware, just be aware of what this is, see what it is. So to come back to that area, there may be a quality of learning something that could show up also, that you're beginning to understand how you get triggered by something. And if you don't do anything with that triggering, that it tends to fall away. But if you ramp up stories on top of it, well, not only did she say that, but that she did this, and I'll bet you 10 minutes from now she's going to do the same thing again. If you just continue to, it's like we're short story writers, always trying to create some kind of, and that is about securing the ego that is being threatened, the image that the impression that there's some separate being. There's a body here, hands, eyes, nose, ears, tongue, body, mind complex. We think we're somebody. You are not. You're not separate from anything anywhere. You're not separate from a tree that hasn't even sprouted yet, that 50 years will be growing next door. You're not separate from that. If you think you are, well, go ahead. You think whatever you want. I'm talking about what I'm looking at, not what I'm thinking about. I don't think much. And if you're around me very much, you'll find that's very, very disconcerting. Get too far away from the teacher, you don't get enough heat. Get too close to the teacher, you get burnt. And I'm not intending to burn anyone. I'm not here to torture you. But if you have asked me to function as your teacher, I intend to do that at the cost of my life. Which isn't a big deal because there is no life. There's no separation anywhere. If you think there is, then you'll muster your forces and you'll try to protect your bankroll or whatever, or your teaching. Yes.
Junchi Valley, if a situation feels difficult to receive, if I'm lecturing myself by saying, what is this showing me about my ego, or something like that, is that doing too much with it?
I don't think so. I think that would be very conditional, situational. There will be times when it'll actually be a dynamic like that where you'll puzzle about it and wonder about, and maybe go rehearse, go over, not rehearse, but go review things that you said or done. So I think we all do that in our relationships, dynamics, to try to see if we can get a deeper understanding of what it is. But without a strong awareness practice, that whole area of ego wants a credential. It wants to be right. It wants to be correct. I'm no different than you are. So what is the difference? How can I sit up here and talk like this? What's the difference? Tokugawa, what's the difference? Speak. Don't sit there. Speak. I don't know. That was a perfect answer. Yes.
Kelsey Vine. Is there a difference between wanting to share, or what is the difference between wanting to share an experience that is appearing, arising, and wanting credential?
Same thing. Don't share anything. This doesn't mean have a standard where you're not going to tell anybody anything that's going on, but if it's spiritual path, keep that to yourself unless it's really necessary to tell somebody about it. Because people tend to compare, pretty soon everyone's going up the mountain. And then people start talking about what your path looked like. What is yours? Oh, I'm tripping over these things. Well, these things are bothering me. And then we actually lose our own path because we like not being lonely. We like sharing and knowing that other people are feeling what we're feeling. That's not Sangha. That's a relative kind of community, closer to possibly a lodge hall or even a cult where you have things in common. That you're sharing things like that. You practiced in book studies before. There's some sharing going on there, but not a lot. How does it look to you? What's the difference to you?
Kelsey Vine, I think when you say we don't like to be alone, that resonates for me. I think I want to share because I'm not wanting to be alone in the experience.
So don't misunderstand. I'm not saying you shouldn't share and talk. Maybe you should do that, maybe more than someone else. Is the right and wrong part, let's move that right out of there. But I'm saying, don't do anything unless you have to. If you can keep your own counsel, is a fancy way of saying it, keep it to yourself. And then you see what it does in consciousness. But if you mix it in with other people's ideas, judgments, their advice, so I'm not against, you're a counselor, and I'm not against that. I promote that. Maybe you need to do that. But if you can, it's good to do this on your own. Talk to your teacher about it. And even then, you could also not even bring it up to that person. You follow me a little bit?
Thank you.
You might find yourself really talking. Another time you might not talk so much. Situational. You won't be able to find there's a lot of kites in the air and there's no kite tails in there. You can't track. You see the kites, you see the different aspects of mind, but you can't find out what's holding anything in place or moving up or moving down. The location is based on an illusion called time and space. And if you're trying to work things out with those, you might be a great physicist. You might write a book on quantum physics or something, but it's not the spiritual path. Spiritual path is just, even to say it's beyond that is a misunderstanding. Yes.
Are you bowing? What is required of a student to receive bowing?
Shut up and receive. Just shut up. Receive. No comment.
Will we know if we're receiving?
Maybe not. So the area that she's asking questions in is a really good area, but you've got to have you have to have a willingness to present that kind of inquiry in this direction for me to respond in such a way that can go into the area that is really where you're really perplexed at, rather than the area that you're trying to present to me that you're perplexed at. That's not the deep area. It's kind of I'll ask this, then it'll look like this is what I want to know. That way the teaching person, who is not a separate person, the teaching person is your consciousness.
You go bowing.
Have one right here, and you down, I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Sense you bowing,
sent you.
can we be outflowing or producing and receiving simultaneously?
You can. You can. That's what's happening right now with this old man. Yes, outflowing, inflowing out. There's no differentiation. They're not separate, but you have to practice by receiving. This is the practice, the ground path and fruition. The ground is this intense suffering we all deal with. If you weren't suffering, you would not be here. You didn't have conflict of some kind. You may be suffering a lot less than person 3 footsteps away, but that's why we're here. So that's the ground to the suffering, what the Buddha pointed at. Life is suffering, or frustration, or disappointment, or difficulty, nerve endings everywhere. And the path is, be aware of that. Be aware of what that is fundamentally. And so if you go to the fruition part of it, then the production, the receiving and the production is so without a center, so without a fringe, so without a past, so without a future, that if you are still there and you're clinging to a self, you're going to run away, you're going to break down sobbing, you're going to fly into a rage, or you're going to do any number of things, anything, but be not be separate from the incredible space that is being offered to you. Spaciousness. It's like being alive and dead at the same time. Make a little bit of sense to you? Yeah. You're probably, it's not a compliment. You're probably closer to that than most of the people I've met. That's why you were invited to move here so many years ago. I needed your help. I wanted somebody like you as close as possible. Again, not a compliment. You don't take positions on things. Have you noticed? Like, list 3 opinions you have. I rest my case. No position. Positionless. That's why she's such a great therapist. You know,
You're bowing. If we're intending to receive and we notice that what we think we're receiving, there's some resistance or difficulty there. Are we still receiving? Bowing.
probably. There's going to be the difficulty. It comes in chunks. Excuse me. So it may get really dense, but then we continue to look at it and look at it. And if we can, don't elaborate, don't interpret it. Don't put anything on it. Just continue to, excuse me, receive it as it is as much as you can. And it's probably going to be challenging, depending on all the chemistry around that, having to do with the soap opera in your mind about your life, or things that are happening in your life, or what something said, what someone said, or what you said to them and what they said back to you. It's pretty exhausting. Or you don't.
Thank you.
You. Yes, sir.
Yoke bowing. If we're endeavoring to receive and we take a position that the person we're listening to just needs to be listening to.
Guess what?
Just needs to be listened to.
Yes.
Is that too much?
No, it's very nice to, if someone's talking and listen to them. It's just basically you're just receiving. Some people, that one of the best ways you can help somebody is just to listen to what they're saying, what they're talking about, or complaining about, explaining. Just listen. Is that what you were asking about?
Yes, thank you.
So what are you gonna do with that information?
We'll see when it shows up, I guess. If
Okay.
it does.
If it does.
When you're bowing,
Yes.
when that, if the resistance shows up, as you
Yes.
was stating,
Yes,
is there a way to break through the resistance?
I think the way to use your words, break through the resistance, is just go into the resistance without any agenda of breaking through it or any looking for results. Just feel the resistance, receive the difficulty, receive the crap that is trying to get into your mind stream. Receive it.
What if you know the resistance and yet, and know what you need to do, but don't do it?
What do you mean? You know what you need to do.
Sometimes I feel myself resisting and know that what I need to do is fall at the feet of the teacher. But I can't do it.
Well, it's a start. You don't have to literally fall at the feet of the teacher, but you can do that just in your mind stream. Just everything is everything. This is, you're being introduced to this entire world. This entire world is the, if you're a student, then everywhere you look is a teaching. Every person's face you look into is a teacher. This doesn't mean that you might necessarily give them some kind of credential, but you're actually participating in the illusion of duality or otherness by, this is the path. This is not the fruition. The fruition is worse and better. It's worse because you can't find a reference point anywhere. There isn't anyone left. It's just illusion, and it can be rampant in terms of its confusion.
And you're vowing, so is it finally realizing that we're living in a duality that is false?
I think that's still the path area. Eventually, even that doesn't fit or doesn't work. Everything comes apart. Even the conclusion that it's duality or the conclusion that it's an illusion. Oh, that rhymes.
So how do you know if it's, you say you see it, you see not to?
What I'm saying is, I say this over and over again. Everyone's looking at it, and you're looking at it, I'm looking at it. I know what it is, and you don't. If you knew what it was, you certainly wouldn't be here listening to me. You're only here because you're different interpretations of this, but you're not quite sure of who you are and what all this crazy stuff is going on in your mind stream, and why you can't control yourself or stop feeling certain ways, or why you're feeling this way when there doesn't seem to be any causation for it. That's why you're here. I mean, a lot of variations on that. But I would say it this way: I'm not concerned with how I feel. There was a time when I was concerned with how I felt, and I struggled with it all the time. Now whatever shows up, that's how I feel. But there's no one there feeling that. There's just feeling. It's called self-liberated. Everything is self-liberated. It shows up and it's just has no, it's like a horse. You hear the horse coming down the trail and you hear it, and it's a horse and it's neighing, whinnying, and suddenly everything starts to, its feet disappear, its hooves disappear, the sound disappears, everything comes apart, yet there's still the illusion of that. But you see that it's unreal. And it has never even moved, let alone neighed.
And you're vowing, so you say you don't care how you feel, and yet I've seen you, especially working with students,
Fly into a rage.
or a feeling that arises and then it can linger. What is that?
Feeling that's lingering. What is that? See, it's a feeling that's lingering. Yes. What is it you want to know? Let's go to
Is that
that.
caring? Is that not feeling? Is that feeling?
It's not that there's not caring there, that there's no identity that is reinforcing that. So therefore, whatever is showing up is dependently arisen. There's no person behind anything. If you think there is, it's even more painful. The first painfulness is bad enough, just being a living being. As the Buddha said, life, you're alive. Anyone here not alive? I'm alive. We're all alive. Well, what the Buddha said to you directly, if you listen, is life is suffering. He didn't say, well, if you realize your true nature, you won't suffer anymore. He didn't say that. Or did he? You know if he said that? Were you there?
Isn't that nirvana,
What, in what or not?
not suffering?
That's not suffering. And this isn't apathy. This isn't when I'm mocking here, yawning. It's no particular position on anything. It's not taking anything and making it into a square knot that won't come loose. Some kind of tight part of the mind, your opinion, your judgment, your feeling about some certain thing that needs to be that way. And you constantly reinforce that by your storytelling to yourself over and over and over again, so that it doesn't suddenly come apart. My goodness, what if it came apart and you didn't have a position on anything? You'd have, what's the, no axe to grind.
Would that make us sensu too?
You mean sensuous? Because if it's us and it's sensu, then it's sensuous. You meant sensu too, like another sensu. I get your message. Did you get that? Took it down. He didn't get it. That's awareness. Only he can do that. The rest of you guys got to work on it, right?
So Gordon Bowing, one of your teachings is to bring the negativity to you, but to
Yes.
give it to you.
Yes,
How do we give you negativity?
it shows up differently with each person. It might be just telling me what's happening. It might be doing it without ever speaking to me personally, but just doing it in that way, the way that I did with both of my teachers, because I didn't get a chance to meet with them very much.
So Gordon Bowing, did you imagine giving your
yes,
teachers,
yes.
and how did that look in your mind's eye?
I would have to get autobiographical there, not really want to do that. But yeah, it would show up if you understand what's being done there, then you would find a way to do that. It could be just prostrating. It could be the classical form of sevenfold Mahayana Puja, which you're probably familiar with that. Is everybody familiar with that? There's 7 different things that you can do to offer, present to the teaching as a way of giving up. It's the Mahayana approach, where you put others before yourself, and you use ritualized structures to be able to help you do that. Prostration is one of them. Offering incense is another. Why would you come up and light incense and bow to an image, a wooden image that's actually isn't anybody, and offer that? There's no reason. It doesn't hold up. It's just a giving without anything expectation in return. You don't care what's going to happen. You're practicing. You're actually training yourself to not care, not to ignore, not apathy, not dismissiveness, but actually do something you're very serious about. This is what coming back to question about form. We need the form so that we can see that the fundamental nature of everything is formless. It's without form. But you can't see that unless you look at the form. This is the form that is a perplexing one, because we're so convinced we are someone going somewhere. If suddenly you go to the doctor next week and he, she, they say you have 2 weeks to live because of this or this and this, we'd find just about how attached you are to your body. You'll know exactly where you are on the spiritual path. If you're concerned about this disappearing, then that's the degree to which you misunderstand what this is about. Well,
So Gordon Bowing, we offer flowers and incense. We offer we're not offering a pile of shit on the altar. What does it mean to offer
checking.
negativity?
I have some really weird students. Never know, you might find a big whopper up there. Go ahead.
How is negativity represented in the puja? Of the
Do
seven,
you practice that?
no,
Does anyone here practice sevenfold? Practice that? Can you, which one of those would you think would be represent negativity?
There is one of the seven is recounting what you regret maybe, or
Past mistakes, that kind of thing, things you've, like mine is things I've stolen from people. Hard to think on that. Know that you've been so blind that you could take something from someone else. Everything is in exactly the place it needs to be. Don't move it. If you start to shift it around, then you're a thief. Look closely at that, see where that applies in your life. Don't take anything, don't leave anything. And don't ignore anything. Very difficult. Young,
玉红报应, you said before everything we see is our mind. And that bring me a sense of inwardness and some opening. Is that self-centeredness?
not particularly. Everything is self-centered. Any position this way or that way, it's going to have some self, but we're not trying to get rid of that. We're trying to see that it's unreal. You do not have to get rid of your ego. You just have to see that there's an aspect of consciousness that curls up into a knot and thinks that he, she, they are correct, or the other one is incorrect, or needs to be punished, or needs to be rewarded, or any kind of position is the illusion of other, or the illusion of a self, and it's unreal. If you see that it's unreal, then you may continue to function in a way that seems confusing to others, but you will not be confused because you're not separate from the confusion anymore. When you think the confusion is something that happens to you and then goes away, this is the nature of relative truth. But when you're no longer, no matter what happens, you are that. This is liberation, because everything is just self-existing. It has its own dynamic. You don't have to be particularly afraid of anything. I mean, nothing is threatened, would be another way of saying it.
玉红报应, thank you. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I don't see everything is a teaching for myself. I see some teachings. I don't see some other teachings. Am I taking sides?
Are you what?
Am I making a differentiation, taking sides?
Well, probably, but it's just about being aware of that. You don't have to change that. You don't have to like stop taking sides. Just be aware of that. That might bring a little humility into your. When I say humility, it brings in the feeling that the self-centered part of the mind is just an illusion. And there's no way you can fail. There's no way you can win. There's no way that any relative situation has any kind of substantiality to it other than it's an illusion. So it's about being aware of what this is rather than fixing it or changing it. If you can do that, then you will not be at war with anything. You will no longer go to war with others or with yourself. And the exception to that is if you're functioning as someone's teacher, then you may have to go to war with that person in order to actually keep your vow, hold your vow to be with all things. And if you're functioning as a teacher, that's going to be difficult, not only for you, more than likely, but for your students. As it says, in the teaching don't get enough. Get too close to the teacher, you get burned. Don't get close enough to the teacher, you don't get enough heat. I had that experience with both of my teachers. They both died.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you say 语红报应, when you say just be aware, I often have the second part. I feel like awareness is always so slow. This is how I feel for so long. So does awareness have a speed? 报应.
Does it have a speed?
Comes with the depth of our practice. 报应.
Yes, fast, medium, slow. Those are the three. Which one are you dealing with?
语红报应, maybe super slow. I don't know.
Super slow. I didn't tell you about that one. So I follow what you're saying. I'm just saying, just work with it as it shows up. However it shows up, that's how it needs to be relative to your path. Relative, just like some people spend many hours every day meditating. Some people spend 20 minutes every 2 or 3 days, or that are still very sincere and serious about the Dharma. And you've heard me say you should sit as much as you can. But I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to be in your social structure, in your family structure, in your mind stream, and what you're dealing with your karma, the causes and conditions that brought you into into the 6 realms in the first place. So I would say just do the best you can. If you're inspired by the Buddha's teaching, if something I've said is helpful to you, then just practice as much as you can to see clearly. As Sokuzan, one of his talks recently was, and I can't quote the teacher, but he's mentioned it, and it's I reflect on it quite a bit, and I keep quoting it without going back to find out who I'm quoting. But it was someone that Sokuzan mentioned. Someone says, "I don't care. I'm not too." After paraphrase, I'm not too concerned about what you do, but I want you to see clearly. And that's, I would say, totally agree with that. It's how you stay in the monastery, become a monk, or move to Portugal, or whatever you do, that's your business. But if you give me the benefit of the doubt a little bit, then I would say try to make sure you see clearly, that you see that what you look at is unreal, until you see that what you look at is not what you think about what you look at. It's what you actually see. If you actually see it, it's a mirror. It is not something else. It is empty of the other that used to hoodwink you and confuse you by making you feel that things other people were doing or saying were triggering emotions and feelings in your mind stream. Not so, but you need to see it. There's no way you can be convinced. It wouldn't even be helpful to have someone try to convince you of that. Question? You have a question? Yes, sir.
You're bowing.
What is your name again?
Lenore.
So you're not a sir, are you?
I can be.
Right. Let's hang out. Go ahead.
When the illusion falls, what remains?
Well, the fancy word would just be reality, just whatever this is. The illusion is all of the network of things that are coming and going, light things, bright things, sharp things, dull things, smooth, fast, slow, fast, medium, those things. And when that stops, then there's no self and there's no other, there's just consciousness. And not much is happening. If you want to go into that any deeper, it's less and less and less, because the whole world of phenomena starts to come apart. Just like as the longer you practice meditation, I assume you practice meditation, the longer you practice, the more your idea, your construct about who Lenore is and what she's up to, or what he's up to, or what that person is doing, who they are, where they're going, what people think of them, what you think of the people that think things of you, and what you think about the people who think things of you, that you think about them, that they're thinking about you. You follow me? You should. Did you follow me? What did I say?
Maybe.
So, yeah, I'm just saying, it gets like that. I'm being a little silly, but it gets like, eventually, we're not sure who thought what about who, when, or whatever. That all starts to deconstruct itself just by looking at it. You don't have to go in, like C.G. Jung or Sigmund Freud or Alfred Adler or anyone to kind of deconstruct everything and have to take it apart. It's not cognitive behavioral process, although that can be valuable to people to do that. But you just look at it and the whole thing just starts to unwind in space. But you have to look at it without grasping. You have to look at it without pushing. You have to look at it without distracting yourself into something else. Just to bear attention on whatever rises, receive it, receive it, receive it. Be a student forever. Good luck.
Yeah.
One more question.
Jokabang Ath in the UK is asking, am overwhelmed with sadness and crippled with fear and avoidance. It seems there's no way out. Can you please help how to keep receiving the unimaginable? Thank you kindly.
What's the name?
Ath, A-T-H,
Where's Ath live?
in the United Kingdom.
So I don't know much about you, Ath. I don't know if I've had a face-to-face, even on Zoom interview with you. But the way it sounds, the most important thing that you can do, it seems to me, is to find a place to sit still, face a wall, or face a palm tree if you want to, but face something where not much is happening, nothing is moving, and just watch what flows in the mind, what comes and goes and comes and goes. And kick it right up there where you're sitting most of the day, 7 or 8, 9 hours a day. And do that for a few months. You ask me, I just told you, it takes a lot of work. If I get that kind of question from anyone else, they'll get something similar. You don't ask me the question, I'm not going to necessarily recommend that you do that. But if you live in the monastery, then you're going to do a lot of sitting here if you just follow just half the forms. We have a Denkoe coming up pretty soon. There's a lot of sitting in that. Then the whole month of February is totally dedicated to sitting meditation all day long, every day for what, 28 days, I think it is this year. It takes a lot of sitting. You can't think your way into this around it. You can do some of it, but it's just as Trungpa Rinpoche, my teacher, used to say, it's like mental gymnastics. It gives the illusion that you're thinking, you're getting more and more clear about it. But it doesn't actually go into the root of conscious, the root of the situation, which is the assumption that there's something else. There isn't anything else. You're actually looking. You're actually looking at what's looking. And you're also, another way that I like to say this, is what you're looking for. You're looking right at it. You just don't recognize it. Thank you so much.
Stand and dedicate the merit.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jivo san shi di shi fu, shi song bu sa moko sa, moko ja wo mi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.